I would now like to welcome my friend David Cummings to the stage. David is an Atlanta-based tech entrepreneur who has founded 10 companies employing thousands of people. Talk about making an impact. Those companies include Pardot Sales Loft, Greensea, In-Town Golf Club, which I enjoy a lot, Hannon Hill, and Terminus. David is also the founder, as many of you know, of the Atlanta Tech Village, which is now the United States' 4th largest tech hub, and the lead investor in Calendly, the world's most popular scheduling app. After selling Pardot, he was named the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year winner and one of the 100 most influential Atlantans by the Atlanta Business Chronicle. He is a member of YPO Southern 7 and on the boards of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, the Buckhead Coalition, and the Westminster Schools. He's a native of Tallahassee, Florida, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in economics. Excuse me, that was from Duke, right? Not in Tallahassee. Sorry, John Yates, I know it's all the boring Dukies, there you go. As well as receiving an honorary doctorate from Mercer University. David, if you'll come to the stage and introduce our panelists, we look forward to the discussion around startups in and around Atlanta.
Thank you so much.
Come on.
So I'm excited to be here today. I was first invited to the Rotary stage back in 2013 by Sam Williams. Sam, are you in the room? I think I saw you earlier. Just stepped out. And so in late 2012, we announced that we had bought the old Ivy Place building and we're turning it into the Atlanta Tech Village. And so that was the cover of the Atlanta Business Chronicle, above the fold. And from that article, it was a complete wholesale embrace by the Atlanta civic and business community of the Atlanta startup community. And so today I'm excited to share and talk with some of the most prominent and exciting up-and-coming entrepreneurs in Atlanta. So Atticus, Sandeep, Tyler, come on up. And so we're gonna have a conversation. Yeah, go grab one. So I always enjoy the entrepreneurs giving their elevator pitch. And so in the land of startups, there are some entrepreneurs that give elevator pitches where the elevator might be 1,000 stories. We like to do the one breath elevator pitch. So one breath. If you have to breathe again, the elevator has gone too long. So Atticus, kick us off. What does Pad Split do?
Sure. Can you hear me okay? Pad Split is a two-sided marketplace. On the one hand, we provide access to private rooms in shared homes for the 50% of people who cannot afford their rent. And on the other side, we get paid by hosts who offer those rooms to those folks, and generally real estate investors who earn double their income so that they actually create more affordable housing opportunities.
Wonderful. Sandeep, Cove Tool?
We at Cove Tool, we are bringing AI to the world of architecture, and we're taking high-powered technology to design low-cost, high-performance buildings around us and renovating them too. So just as a quick shout-out, we have offset more carbon than Tesla.
And Tyler, take us through Saltbox.
I'm one of those 1,000-foot people, but I'll take David's challenge. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Saltbox, and we operate about a dozen co-warehousing facilities across the country where we provide physical space, logistics services, and software that helps small e-commerce brands and other logistically driven businesses operate better.
And so if you hear the theme across the three entrepreneurs, there's a built environment component, whether it's warehouses, whether it's software to design more energy efficient buildings, or it's taking existing buildings and making them more accessible from an affordable housing element. How has Atlanta been beneficial as a city to build your startup, especially in the context of the built environment and real estate? Atticus, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, the first thing, I was here, so that's probably important. I in all seriousness, I followed my wife 22 years ago down to Atlanta because I wanted to move to a place that was a vibrant real estate market. And I cut my teeth in the crash here, buying single-family homes in Southwest Atlanta, and I think I could not have learned all the things that I did had housing at the time not been as affordable as it was. Of course, we've seen a pretty dramatic change over the last several years. But as with any business, and certainly in the technology space, the power of your network is truly an imperative to grow and scale a business. And in the real estate community, I saw a number of you here already today. The number of folks that I have been able to engage with over that period of time that have been able to fuel my career, I'd say has been a massive impetus to do what I've done now.
So Sandeep, why Atlanta for your startup?
I can say without a doubt that we exist and are as big as we are and have worked on over 60,000 projects only and only because we built our company inside Atlanta. I'll tell you a story from about 6 years ago. There was something called Atlanta Startup Battle with our very own Paul Judge, who ran this competition and gave an entrepreneur who had no connections to the VC community an opportunity to go upstage. And David, you were a judge. And they picked me. I won that. And that was our first that was really our first foray into building this business. And just 6 years later, we're a team of 60, continuing to grow, continuing to scale, and continuing to make an impact in the world. And I can't even stress about the tech talent. Georgia Tech, Emory, Georgia, KSU. We are blessed with so many great schools in Atlanta. It's just mind-blowing. So that's us.
I'll maybe just broaden the question a bit and just to kind of Atlanta and what works well for me and my company. I moved here from Silicon Valley. It's been about 7 years living in the heart of Palo Alto, kind of, in the thick of things, and decided though that I didn't want to spend my life in that bubble. I wanted to work in the space, wanted to leverage the space, but didn't want to live there because you just miss a lot. And so we looked at a map and we chose Atlanta as a city that was. Is that better? Yeah, that was ideal for its kind of careful balance of a thriving, growing tech ecosystem, but also rooms like this that I think are on balance much more representative of kind of how the world works and expose you as an entrepreneur to many more interesting problems. And so the fact that I now have built a company in e-commerce logistics and warehousing is something that was 6 years ago, pretty inconceivable to many of my Silicon Valley friends. But, my view is that that's an opportunity that I only was able to see because I came to this city.
So when people think about startups, they love to talk about venture capital. They love to talk about funding. They love to talk about runway. The next question for the panel is around your experience fundraising both in Atlanta and the greater US, and as well as how much money have you raised so far and how many rounds of financing. So we'll kick it off with Tyler. How much has Saltbox raised so far? And what are some lessons learned from your fundraising experience?
Yeah, so we've raised a little over $50 million of venture capital and about $150 million or so related to our real estate activities. Today, one of our biggest investors is here in Atlanta, a firm called Socium Ventures, which is a Cox Enterprises company. And you all probably know that Cox has done just a tremendous amount to aid and enable the startup ecosystem here in Atlanta. We could do a whole panel on that. But anyway, I think that again, if I kind of contrast, what the ecosystem here in Atlanta versus Silicon Valley, I've seen a lot of change over the past 9 years. Paul and David and John were, pounding the pavement back then, but there are a whole bunch more people now who, are on that boat. There's a lot more capital. There's a lot more, smart capital, I would say, in Atlanta that really makes it a much more viable place to, build and scale a company, which I think is really exciting.
For us, we've raised about $37 million, and I've always been a firm believer that you raise money not because you can, because gosh, I think you can raise capital so long as you're running a good business, and if you can't, there's some questions about the business that you're running. But the real question is, do you need it? And we've continued to optimize that, and every round that we have raised of the 3 rounds, it's not because we had to, it's because we were ready to scale even faster. We were ready to make an even bigger impact. We were ready to give back even more. And I thought that's been really fantastic. Our last round, I have to say it because I'm the biggest fan, was also one of our key investors was Robert Downey Jr. I'm a big fan of the Marvel cinematic universe, and luckily the price of the round was already negotiated because there's a 0% chance that I could negotiate with Iron Man.
How about you, Atticus?
Love that. Yeah, like Tyler, Cox is also one of our largest investors. They led our Series B round. To date, we've raised a little bit over $40 million in venture capital. A good portion of that is from Atlanta. And going back to our seed round, I hinted at the real estate network originally before I decided to go out west, because we had a pretty big idea. It was that anyone, anywhere should have access to affordable housing. And when you're selling a big idea versus a P&L, it's generally assumed in the venture capital world that you're going to go west to sell that big idea. But even before we ever went out there, we had already assembled our entire seed round in committed funds from investors in Atlanta, which gave us a lot more leverage in those conversations, and I think has really helped fuel us today. And then, like Sandeep, I mean, for me, it's less about how much we've raised. Today, we're the largest co-living marketplace in the country, and it's not even close. But the other competitors have largely gone out of business because they didn't maintain those underlying fundamental principles. And we've had 4 cash flow profitable months so far this year, and hopefully we'll have our first full cash flow profitable quarter here soon. So it's all about creating a sustainable enterprise, and I think folks in Atlanta and the Atlanta business community certainly understand that and share those same philosophies.
So from a startup world, just like the rest of the commercial environment, it's been changed dramatically with work from home and remote work. This idea that your headquarters is going to employ the majority of your personnel is no longer commonplace. One of the topics for the panel is, how do you think about building your teams in this post-COVID world? What's your strategy? Where do you recruit talent? Do you have a work from home or in-office component? And what might that be? So we'll kick it off with Sandeep.
Sure. So I've thought long and hard about fully remote, hybrid, fully in office, and I can say with some degree of confidence, because we are a very data-driven company. We literally track everything and we measure A versus B versus C. I am confident the setup we have right now is the best setup for our company, which is hybrid. We go into office 2 days a week and we work from home 3 days a week, which also means that all of our employees are local here in Atlanta and meet here in our downtown office couple times a week, because it allows us to whiteboard, it allows us to problem solve, it allows us to think outside the box. It actually allows us to have water cooler conversations that, oh my gosh, no matter how many Zoom rooms I start with the name water cooler, no one wants to get on it.
Tyler, what's your approach?
Yeah, so we were born during COVID and effectively had no choice but to go remote, and so through that early growth period, we hired employees all over the country, in fact, all over the world, and at this point, it's difficult to unwind that. I would. If I could, I would prefer to have Sandeep's structure today. I do agree with the points that she made. However, I also believe that those are fairly short-term issues. I think that the kind of pace of technology innovation will pretty soon eliminate that delta between in-person versus not. And the other thing I would say is that we now really aggressively hire internationally in Colombia and the Philippines, in Argentina, and we've longed. BPO, I think, is an old term, or I don't know, but it's a long time people have been hiring internationally. It's a new day. I will just say, from my perspective, the talent is just incredible. Hopefully, I don't have any employees in the room, but we consistently now find that our employees in the Philippines who, on average, professionals with advanced degrees making $20,000 a year are outperforming, outworking, in all ways their American counterparts who we pay 5 times, 6 times as much. And it's a very, very, very compelling opportunity right now, and it's only going to accelerate. One other thing I'll say is these countries and the individuals very smartly are extremely focused on accelerating their adoption of artificial intelligence in order to get faster, and that's just going to be really a dagger in the heart to the American-based workers who they're competing against. So anyway, leave it there.
Atticus, thoughts on work from home,
Sure.
remote, distributed?
Our headquarters was right across from West End MARTA Station. And we came through the Techstars Accelerator program. We were in Ponce City Market, and then moved over to West End. And COVID hit, and 2 weeks in, we decided, okay, this is not going to work. We have to go fully remote. We've been hybrid ever since, but not necessarily in the same way that you described. We have folks in 18 different countries, and so we had a core team in Ukraine, so I certainly had to brush up on international geography and getting people out of Ukraine during that crisis, which was not something I would have thought I had to encounter in a affordable housing US-based company. But if you believe that talent is the foundation of any business, and now all of a sudden, literally you have a universe available to you of talent, there is an extreme opportunity in being able to get talent from anywhere. My CFO lives in Houston. We have developers all around the country and all around the world. And we have 180 people now, about half onshore, half offshore, many of which are still based here in Atlanta, and when we fly people in all the time to be able to have those in-person events and the water cooler conversations. But yeah, I think it's a new world, and it's up to us as managers to adapt, because we don't have the possibility of going back to a fully in-person environment. If I told my CFO or my head of product that they had to move back to Atlanta, I think we would lose them.
So in the context of Atlanta and growing our business community, what does it mean now from a startup community and the greater community? How do you think about it as an Atlanta headquartered startup? Does it matter? And where do you see the future headed?
I mean, for me, it matters less about where you're based as opposed to where your impact is. And we're a public benefits corporation, meaning we're not just, we don't have just the obligation to shareholders, but also to a public benefit. And for us, that stated benefit in our charter is providing housing for people earning less than 80% of the area median income. In Atlanta, from 2018 to today, we've created 6,600 units of affordable housing, serving people with a median income of $27,000 a year. 45 of those people have gone on to purchase homes. And I see the same types of impacts happening now in our newer markets of Tampa, Jacksonville, Orlando, Las Vegas, Denver. And this will always be our home. And certainly we care very deeply about answering the fundamental question here, which is, do the workers who serve in our city deserve at least an opportunity to live in it? And that's something that we are committed to making sure can be answered affirmatively, both in Atlanta and elsewhere. But yeah, for us, it's certainly been a great city to get started in, and we wouldn't be here today without a competition in 2017 that was around affordable housing ideas where I just threw something in. Actually, I pitched at Atlanta Tech Village that kind of got me started. And then we joined Techstars here. So it's been a phenomenal nesting ground to grow a startup. But for us, it's really just about what's the impact that we can create and leave as a lasting legacy.
So we'll stay with Atticus for a second. Affordable housing is a very hot, very important topic. Your business model is not without controversy. What are some of the things that you encounter from a municipality and regulation perspective?
Great question. Thanks, David. Yeah, I mean, it's something should not be controversial. I hope no one would disagree with that question in this room about do the workers in your city deserve at least an opportunity to live here. Today, average rent in Atlanta is about $1,500, which means you need north of $55,000 just to qualify, just to be able to get that application approved. And I'm sure most of us who are employers have people who earn less than that. Unfortunately, the reality is the way that people do that is they share. They have to share housing because we don't have the funding nor the time to be able to create a sufficient number of units, which is why we've been looking at a gap since I started in this business in 2008. And there are prescribed limits on the number of people that are allowed to live together. So here in Atlanta, historically the number has been 6 unrelated people allowed to live together. Actually, there's a proposal on the table to move that down to 3. If you go to Cobb County, it's 2. If you go to the city of Doraville, it's no more than 2 unrelated people, but your grandparents don't count as part of your family. So it's a lot of challenging definitions there, in my opinion and the opinion of our attorneys. Those are fundamentally opposed to a number of constitutional protections, freedom of association under the First Amendment, and the Equal Protections Clause, right? If you can say that an unlimited number of related people can live in the same house, but no more than 2 or 3 unrelated can live in the same house, that seems a little bit arbitrary. So those are the main things that we run into, just to give a flavor. But yeah, I was only named after an attorney, so I'll leave it there.
For Sandeep, one of the hot topics right now is AI. Everybody's talking about it. ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, it goes on and on. How does AI play a role in your software, and how is AI going to help your industry?
So when I think about what AI can do, I'd really like anyone that's used ChatGPT or used Google, which I'm thinking is everyone, but ChatGPT I'm thinking is close to everyone. Instead of typing a question, looking through, 20 different articles that Google pops up, then you pick one, then you find the answer. Oh my gosh, it's so slow. I asked the question to ChatGPT, there's my answer. Now that is what I think AI is going to do for us in the services industry, where instead of giving people, here's a piece of software, please learn it, please spend your R&D dollars to figure out how your team is going to use it, versus here's the output. What do you need? Do you need to figure out where this building needs to go? Do you need to figure out where the windows ought to be? Do you need to figure out what materials to put on the building? Instead of giving you a piece of software that you can then go learn and figure out how to do, we've actually started offering people AI-powered services, and that's been really, really phenomenal, because I have learned in the last few years, while we have grown drastically, as many clients that I talk to, no one really wants to learn a new piece of technology. So that's been the fun learning and fun journey for us, and all the while for us, we've continued to grow our database of projects which each inform each other, making our proprietary AI even stronger and smarter. So today, when you go on our website, gosh, you can even sign up for a free app where you can start answering questions about your project and talk to it and figure out what to do. And when you need an expert, you just hit a button and an expert from our team will be in touch.
And so Sandeep, in addition to AI being a hot topic, energy efficiency and environmental considerations, how does your software help on that front?
So everything that I just described, all of these environmental considerations, energy efficiency, all of those are services that our software helps solve. So truly anything from meeting the local Atlanta energy regulations all the way to making your net zero project If you've ever been on Georgia Tech's campus, Emory's campus, you'll see some beautiful, beautiful buildings. The campus center, the Candida building, all of those are extremely low energy because they're making a future for the residents within it so that it can continue to be better. And all of the analysis, exactly how big should the windows be, what kind of HVAC should go in there, all of those decisions are what our software used to run. And now we're like, hey, if you want to use a software, please do. If you don't, please call us.
So Tyler, during the pandemic, the e-commerce business just skyrocketed. Years and years of demand was pulled forward very quickly during a short period of time. And now from a society point of view, we've gone back to the equilibrium on the in-person stores versus e-commerce, still on the trend line going up. How has your business been impacted by the e-commerce revolution, and what are your clients doing with your co-warehousing?
Our business has been certainly positively impacted by the acceleration and the continued growth in e-commerce. If you look at the U.S. SMB e-commerce market today, that's small businesses I'm referring to, somewhere in the order of $400 billion or so a year of revenue of gross merchandise value, and that's impressive. But what's even more impressive is it's still growing at about 15-20% a year, and we now live in this world where we're seeing all sorts of really big things, including our deficit, right, compound, really aggressively, and e-commerce activity is one of those things. And so, we will see a doubling in the size of e-commerce activity in the U.S. again over the next 7 years or so. And the relevance of that. We are all driving that activity. I think the relevance to us and to our customers is that they need to be able to compete. As that growth occurs, we also want that growth to come with more speed, more efficiency, more convenience for us in the way that the Amazons of the world deliver, and that puts a lot of pressure on smaller merchants to do the same thing. And so what we see is a world wherein if we don't enable small businesses to compete, at least to a sufficient degree, from a logistics standpoint, then they will struggle, and eventually they will fall behind. And competing means not only being really good at those go-to-market activities, reaching the customer and such, which they're already good at, but also at the logistics activities, at warehousing these products and getting those products out the door to wherever they're going really efficiently. And so Saltbox provides a lot of leverage to small businesses in that way, and effectively serves to help level the playing field.
So I'm a big proponent of startups and entrepreneurship as a force for good. This idea that you can change the world, you can create something from nothing, and you can impact many lives, many organizations, society. From an entrepreneurial perspective, I know we've alluded to it already, but what are some ways that you view your startup as helping society, and what are some of the ways that you give back in the community as an entrepreneur? Atticus?
Yeah, it's baked into our core, I'd say, first and foremost. At this point, we've housed over 36,000 people. We've saved those individuals over $102 million. Because we take zero public dollars, we've saved over $3.5 billion for taxpayers, creating those housing units. Here in Atlanta, it's over $1.5 billion. And we say, as much as anything, it's one room at a time. There are some really compelling stories that continue to fuel me in this work, and I know most of us here, folks who here in Atlanta have been living in their cars, sleeping in the airport lobby, in spite of having full-time employment, that have gone on to graduate and create their own businesses, buy a car, start a business, or buy a home. And I think both on a macro and a micro level, it just continues to fuel all of us here.
Wonderful. Sandeep?
I think kind of on a similar line, Buildings are 40% of all carbon emissions. So if we think airplanes, if we think cars, I mean, sure, electric cars are great. Not riding on the airplane all the time is wonderful, but buildings are 40% of all carbon emissions. There's a 0% chance there's anything else I could do in my life that would have as big an impact. So that's most definitely one of those. The other way that I think about it, yes, I want our company to be $1 billion company. I want us to IPO. I want that not just for me, but I want it for there to be another woman CEO, graduated from Georgia Tech, a woman of color out there just representing and continuing to give hope to all the other women who want to go out and do this.
Tyler?
Tough. Put me on the other side of this one. Look, I mean, I think similar to Atticus, the impact is absolutely built into the DNA of our company. And we have, this added benefit of literally, living in these facilities with our customers. The Saltbox, by the way, is a reference to a style of home that was very popular in New England back in the day. And it's like one of these houses that has kind of the long sloped roof, and they would have a storage shed in the back, and nice cozy house with the fireplace on the front. And we think of Saltbox as being akin to that sort of environment. The beauty of living with the customer, so to say, is that you get to be a part of their journey in so many ways. I know dozens and dozens of companies very personally that have started at Saltbox and have had great success, and I know many more that have had painful failure, and that's the other side of it, is you have to live through those experiences as well. But it is a company that is full of life in that way. It's full of the energy and vibrancy of startups and entrepreneurship. And to me, that's just the most exciting thing you can do, and the most exciting way you can spend your day. And I think being able to serve as a home, as a launching pad, or whatever it may be, for so many companies across the country is a real joy for us.
So one final question before we open it up for some audience Q&A. You have an incredible group of civic-minded leaders in the room. What is one ask you have for them? Atticus.
So first I'll share a stat. Depending on what source you believe, there is a shortage of housing in the United States, somewhere between 2.5 million and 7.5 million units. At the same time, there are 137 million spare bedrooms right now in the US. So we could solve this crisis tomorrow with the flip of a switch, and that is largely regulatory. So I would just urge everyone to pay attention to what is the definition of family in your given jurisdiction, and what is the fastest, most effective solution to be able to address the housing shortage as quickly as possible, and go forth and prosper.
Sandeep, one question, one thought, one call to action for the audience.
I think my one call to action with as many people that I've met in the room that are associated to real estate, are working on buildings, or architects, engineers, this room is very full of folks that can directly impact buildings. Think green. It doesn't have to be more expensive. We literally can do it cheaper, better, and faster. Think that and make a difference.
Tyler?
I'll support small business. That's number one. That's easy. I'll give a quick PSA instead of an ask. My PSA is artificial intelligence. This is, we hear about it all day, every day, and kind of get tired of hearing about it. But it's that important, and it is, I think, kind of akin to like a tidal wave that is coming for all of us. And you can either try to ride that wave to some degree, or you can, let it do with you as it will. But what you shouldn't do is you should not pay attention. And so for your organizations, your families, yourself, pay deep attention and try to really get your arms around what's going on, what it means for you, what it means for your organizations, and try to get ahead of it. Otherwise, it's going to be, I don't know what it's going to be, but get ahead of it. Yeah, get ahead of it.
Awesome. Time for a few questions. Who would like to go first? We know we're not a shy bunch.
David, I wonder what drives a person to be an entrepreneur and what makes a good entrepreneur. David, you wrote something recently, I think, about entrepreneurs often see something done inefficiently. Maybe they're working for a company. So I'm asking any of you, what drives a person to be an entrepreneur? And because way to business school at Emory, I've taught 10,000 students, and alumni come back to me. What kind of people would be a good entrepreneur? Which ones should keep working for the phone company?
I'm happy to take a hack at that. I don't know if they should work for the phone company, but I will say that the thing about me, or the thing that I see in me and other entrepreneurs that are around me, and I can feel it even when I'm talking to other entrepreneurs, is that comfortness with change. And as a daughter of diplomat, I've lived in Russia, Saudi Arabia, Tanzania, India, and the only thing constant in my life was change, and just being so comfortable with change and chaos and change and then no chaos. I think that is the trait.
Tyler?
There are many considerations here, right? But I think for me, the two headlines, one is just ingenuity. You've got to be someone who is obsessive about, identifying broken things and fixing them. And then number two is courage. You have to, and I always thought that courage was like something you could only label if you were, a soldier or something, but this is not true. The definition of courage is really pretty simple. It's essentially to continue forward, to persevere despite your fear. Most people, when they are fearful, they do not move forward. But entrepreneurs, they just do, and in fact, actually, they tend to move forward even more aggressively when there's fear, because, they're just not afraid. Perhaps they're just so curious about what's on the other side of that. I don't know. But I think those two things, ingenuity and courage, are kind of the headlines.
Do you have a very high pain tolerance? That's all.
David, I think we're interested in your answer to that question. You've been in and around entrepreneurs too. Maybe you can use Tyler's microphone.
The entrepreneurs that I've worked with, the most impactful, I would say, are both blissfully ignorant on the front end and also enjoy having a chip on their shoulder to prove to others that it can be done. So I do think it's a combination of a little bit crazy and a lot of willpower.
That's well said. Dan?
Thank you for a great panel. Question for you. You're all innovators and somewhat ahead of most of the other businesses. And there's a lot of uncertainties around the legal positions of AI. For example, who owns something that the computer produces? It may be you all with your company. It's somewhat uncharted. I'm curious how you manage the risks of AI in terms of intellectual property or any other aspects that are somewhat undefined today.
I'm happy to.
Go ahead.
I'm happy to kick that one off, because we do most definitely do AI-powered services and use AI very extensively in our product itself. I will say that AI by itself, at least in the world of built environment, which is where we operate, can certainly be cause for challenge and cause for mistrust. But AI paired with an expert professional, someone who understands the problem inside out, can really lead to outstanding solutions. Like, I was reading a study the other day, and I'll keep it brief, but there was a 3-part experiment. Part A was for doctors. Part A, to diagnose the symptoms, no AI, just doctors experienced. Part B, doctors with AI. Part C, just AI. Now, I don't know if you all saw that study. C1. I'm not saying that that's where we're going
But it
yet,
is.
but I will say C1. And I do think it's time we start acknowledging that part C1.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting study. It's a great article in the New York Times and very credible, and it did in fact win. I don't have the answer to your question, but what I will say is that there are many such questions in every field you could imagine of, how is this going to work with this law we have, or this rule, or this way the world works, right? And the answer is that the world's going to work different, and I would kind of, a frame of reference that I find helpful here is to think back to, or you can't think back, but to imagine back, right? Try to imagine back to, I think it was 1885 or something like this when, Thomas Edison introduced the light bulb for the first time. And you imagine this from people who are standing around and they, see the revelation of this light bulb. It's magical, right? It's a little bit like that, ChatGPT moment. You're like, I cannot believe that this thing exists. What is this thing? What is electricity? And some people would look at that and they would go, that is crazy and scary. Get it out of here. I don't want anything to do with light, light's the devil. Some people would look at it and go, oh, wow, light seems like it's extremely useful. I can do many, many things with light, which is true. More than you could imagine, in fact, right? And some people will say, light seems extremely useful, but actually this thing called electricity, well, wow, what's that gonna do? Now, the simple observation is that obviously no one in that moment could, to any degree at all, comprehend the impact that electricity would have on the world. It's not possible, right? But it happened, right? And some people got very curious, I don't know how this is going to change the world, but I do know the world's going to change. I do know that the world cannot be the same if it now has electricity in it, And so you just have to push further to say, the question is not how is it going to fit with the rules. The question is, what are the new rules going to be? And that is true, again, in virtually every facet of life. And so I think the more useful thing is to begin to ponder that.
Thank you very much.
Atticus, you'll have first go at our final question.
Hi there. With the new Trump administration coming aboard, I'd love to hear what you think the pros and cons of that are going to be on your companies.
Now we're getting serious.
Sure.
Where are you, John Yates?
Yeah, actually, so we talked a little bit about the regulatory side. So this is something we think about a lot, and we have a lot of bipartisan support for our business. But the pro, I think, is cities and states have to recognize at this point they're on their own, by and large, right? The funding engine has largely stopped to solve a lot of the issues that states and cities have tried to solve. And as with entrepreneurship, scarcity is a forcing function for innovation. And so I think that's a pro for us as a zero cost solution for housing issues. I think that's a significant pro for us. The con is, again, you have a wide variety of regulations that don't make any sense, that differ from one side of the street to the other. And I think anybody can recognize this is not an efficient system. There are 83 different jurisdictions in Atlanta, 83 different definitions of family. That's just crazy, right? But that's not going to change either. And the idea that a federal entity is going to say, hey, we should create some basic ground rules, I don't see that happening in the near future either.
Thank you, Atticus, Sandy, Tyler, for your clear calls to action for the club. Before we adjourn, David, what an outstanding panel. I'm curious on one thing. You've done so much to foster entrepreneurialism in our city. And I look at John Yates, who's done the same, and Donnie and the mayor. And I think your stated aim is for us to catch up with Sand Hill Road and Silicon Valley. What stands between where we're at today and where they are? And is there anything this club and group of business and civic leaders can do to help?
I'm a big proponent of planting 1,000 seeds, the old adage that if you want to sit in the shade, you got to plant the tree 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think as a community, the more we can do to promote entrepreneurship, the more we can do to make it socially acceptable, and the more we can buy local. I think we underestimate the buying power of our collective businesses, and so giving our local entrepreneurs a shot when you're procuring something is a great way to help the community as well.
Stephanie Stuckey was nodding when you said buy local. Thank you for your leadership in our community. I wanted to remind everybody that after next week's program, we're going to be taking a few weeks off for our winter holidays. Sandeep, you're welcome to join us as our guest for our Daughter's Day. We have a young woman, Michaela Ulmer, coming to inspire all of us along the lines of what you have just said. So please let us know if you'd like to join us. And then Governor Kemp will be here in the middle of January to kick off next year. I know everybody awaits Raphael Bostic's first program of the year on forecasting. He's taking some much needed time off down under, and maybe he'll give a chance for everybody else to put their forecasts out. And then, a month later, Dennis, you can ask him the question about what he got right and got wrong. But we will look forward to that. And sign up if you haven't done so for Daughter's Day. There's going to be a full audience. So with that, let's thank our panel again. David, thank you. Tremendous job. The meeting's adjourned.